There was always something weird about the car movies. I couldn't put my finger on it, but there was something weird about them. So I did a little digging to see if it had theory potential. I usually wouldn't do this, as I focus on kids shows in my videos where I can find a single element and turn it into a crazy story. This one was a little different. I was looking at a series of over 6 Pixar films, a show, and 37 shorts, all trying to simply figure out why I had and what that weird feeling was. And what I found was crazy. I've been working on this video for a lot longer than I usually do, building a theory that took me not days, not weeks, but months to create, looking into every piece of Car's media, finding director tapes with direct lore from the creators no one talks about, a lost piece of art, an official Pixar book that directly solves, at this point, a decade-old question, and a story no one thought was there. I promise you, by the end of this video, you will understand all of the Car movies and will have answers to all your questions because I solved the Car movies world building, and I'm here to explain.
Why does it have that many details?
No piece of media has ever pulled me so thoroughly out of its world.
The Cars cinematic universe is the most insane thing Pixar will ever do.
I always thought it was weird how, in the movie Cars, the doors never open on the cars.
The cars in Cars aren't cars at all, but are much more likely a highly evolved form of insect.
We can say for sure the cars are biologically alive.
Are cars born or built?
Why do the cars have doors and door handles?
This is the Pixar theory.
This video all started because of a viral meme from Tumblr that cycles around the internet every few years, and me just now somehow discovering it. It details a conversation of 3 people slowly unraveling the horrors of what the Cars universe is. The Cars universe is best described as a world-building nightmare with zero logic, inconsistent lore, and while any answer gives you to any question, just seeming to give you new questions. Take the existence of the Pope in the Cars world. That would mean there would be Catholics and religion. The Pope car, when seen, was also surrounded by what we can presume is bulletproof glass casing, which would hint at possible attempts at either him or previous popes, something that has happened in our own world. The Pope also existing leads me to ask if there was a Jesus car. What kind of car was he? Are there other religions? Or how about the existence of planes and how they are also sentient because of the Planes movies? This also comes along with there being World War II veteran planes. Does that mean there was a World War II with Nazi cars? What kind of cars were the Nazis? This path of logic is what I call the Cars paradox. Every answer the franchise gives you simply leaves more questions that, if they do answer, only leaves more questions for the future. And the biggest problem is when they start to contradict each other. I've looked through a lot of Cars media, and there are so many contradictory answers to questions like, are cars born or made? The directors of the movies say one thing, the movies say another, artists say something completely different, and it just seems no one, even in Pixar itself, can agree on the logic of these films and what is going on. Which is probably because they weren't making this world in mind with, well, me. Someone taking apart every piece of dialogue, background detail, future media that didn't plan, and just being completely insane. But then I stumbled upon a single piece of evidence no one has used in any theories. Not the Pixar theory, not a film theory, or even an Alex Bale video. And that single image convinced me I had to make this video. What was the evidence? An email.
Okay, so I was about to go to bed. I'm very tired because I've spent many hours researching Cars lore and finding nothing. And basically saying, I'm just gonna give up on this video until I got a weird email. It's about my Cars video, which I have not told anyone about. So no idea how this dude knows I'm doing it, but he showed me a piece of evidence that no one's talked about that I'm gonna because it's crazy.
The email was simply text saying, hey, if you ever want to cover the Cars films, I found this potential origin for them in this book at my university. Never seen anyone talk about it. And he was right. I hadn't even in my deep research seen anyone talk about this official Pixar published book drawn by the creators themselves, giving the Cars an original origin. Now the only question is, what does it mean? Now at first this image may just seem kinda weird and probably doesn't make any sense. I agree. It's confusing, especially when you already did hours and hours of research beforehand and couldn't figure out how it could possibly fit in. But then I thought about it a little deeper. Let's break down what we're actually looking at. The easiest to solve here is the graveyard one, as it just confirms that the junkyard Mater seems to semi-live in is a graveyard. But the other four are a little weirder. And this is an early concept and is also found in the book called Pixar Funny. It is basically a collection of funny, usually dark pieces of art made by the Pixar artists for the films. Now this does not mean it isn't canon, at least in my opinion. I think if there's at least some evidence in the Cars movies and other material, then these images can definitely help build upon some base theories. But what exactly is building upon? I haven't really shared the deep research I've done yet, mainly because it's a mess. But I think with this artwork, we can actually make sense of all of it. The most confusing image here, but easily having some of the most lore, is the mother of all cars. It seems to be some factory that is dedicated to producing the cars we see in the movies en masse. This is supported not in the Cars movies directly, but by the creator themselves, with an Instagram post of one of the creators answering the infamous question. And his answer is crazy.
Now, yes, you do see some younger cars, like at the beginning of the movie at the final race where the planes fly over and there's a little younger looking car. But I always think cars are manufactured, not born, right? Because they're vehicles, so they're manufactured.
Currently, our understanding of this world is one without humans, run by the cars, one where cars dominate the planet, where we see no humans, no animals, and everything around them seems to be a weird one-to-one transfer of humans to cars. Except for how they're born, as with these explanations, it just seems they're not. They're made. But I guess it's the factory of all cars. To even further this point, we see on a Screen Crush interview where this idea is not just doubled down on, but taken to an even weirder level. If you think about it, we have autonomous car technology coming in right now. It's getting to the point where you would sit back in a car and it drives itself. Imagine in the future when the cars keep getting smarter and smarter, and after one day they just go, why do we need humans anymore? They're just slowing us down. It's just extra weight. Let's get rid of them. But the cars take on the personality of the last person who drove it. Whoa, there you go. Whoa, indeed, there you go. Because what does that mean? So let me get this straight. Not only are the cars all manufactured organisms, but are also in no way alive and are AI super evolved Teslas that are soul tied to the spirits of their former owners. What does that even mean? But then somehow, this still isn't even the end of the confusing world of Cars biology. Because while sure, some of the creators say the cars are manufactured, it seems the movies and a bunch of Pixar artists completely contradict this. There's a now unlisted video on Pixar's official YouTube where the animators themselves talk about the difficulties of designing the cars, mainly animating them without the use of arms. And there's an interesting line in the video of why they can't just use their doors as substitutes.
He can't open his doors because that's where his brains are.
What? If the cars actually have brains, they physically could not be AI Teslas and would have to be an organic manufactured being. And it doesn't just stop there. There's a scene in the first 5 minutes of the Cars movie which has a baby or child car in the crowd. Make it make sense. So does this mean that some cars are just stuck being young forever, or do they age? Are the cars that are clearly smaller than other cars young, or are they just unlucky and unnaturally small for the Cars world? What if some cars like Mater have family with parents and cousins, while characters like Lightning doesn't have anybody? Along with this, looking back at the Screen Crush article, does that mean the cars that do take on the personalities the last person drove them were all part of some huge war against humans and just pretending they didn't wipe out the entire planet? Did Mater commit genocide? The director says the cars are made. The art team seems to say they're both born and made, and the movie seems to say they're born and living in some way with brains and organs. None of these things can be true all at once, right? Well, I actually think they could. Here's my theory. There's overwhelming evidence that some cars are born and others are made. Some cars have families with cousins and parents that would hint at the cars being born. Baby cars existing also would hint at some cars aging. But at the same time, we also see plenty of evidence that certain cars are made. And after doing research, I actually found a correlation between being a manufactured artificial car and being a member of the elite class. Let me explain. There's a weird element or world-building detail in the Cars films, with some cars having brands. Take when McQueen sees Sally in Cars 1, calling her out to be a Porsche.
Holy Portia. She's got to be from my attorney's office.
Then later in the movie, Lightning asked, what's the Porsche doing in a small town like this? Which would hint at her brand being high class and important. She then tells him her backstory and how she was an attorney in LA, something Lightning McQueen assumed at the beginning of the film actually. He then goes on to ask if she was rich, and while not directly answering yes, she says, that was my life, hinting at it. There's plenty of evidence in this world of high class cars having brands, and others, like Mater, not. For example, Ferraris as a brand are famous in this world, and the auto shop brothers dream to work with them, not as a person, but as a brand. Or how about Jackson Storm being the newest modern race car model compared to cars like Lightning McQueen? What would make a car modern? Why is he more technologically built and naturally faster compared to Lightning? To the point they actually point out that even in Lightning's prime, Storm is faster than him. That simply doesn't make sense logically. Why are the race cars and the wealthy cars even brands, with the race cars being treated like they're actually evolving in only a few decades, seemingly engineered to win? Well, my theory is they are. I believe race cars and possibly high-class society have engineered a system to develop the best cars they can in terms of speed and maybe whatever the car's world beauty standards are. That's how cars can be both born and made. It solves the biggest problem in this universe, giving this random piece of art that inspired this video, along with the creator answer, a way to fit in on the established canon of car babies and people having mothers. I think more proof of this concept is very apparent in Cars 3 with Cruz. In Cars 3, Cruz is seen as not fit for racing, and everyone is entirely surprised they can do it at all. And well, in the end, the only way they could was using logic to outsmart Jackson Storm, not outrace him. With the context of her not being a racing car, not being from high-class society, and her mentioning her having a family, all things point to her being a normal car, not made to be faster or equipped with all the bells and whistles Lightning or Storm have. I think final proof in my book is a deleted scene in Cars 1 that has Mater and Lightning switching engines. And while when Mater and McQueen swap, Mater gets super fast and Lightning goes slow. This scene is simply outright saying that McQueen's engine is genetically better than the average car by an unnatural amount. Someone did the math of how fast McQueen goes in most of the races, and on average, he goes Mach 1. That is physically impossible for even a NASCAR car to go for that long. And these races he does are unnaturally long as well compared to a normal race. Another thing that solves is age for characters like Doc Hudson. He was made in 1941, but the problem with that is he also got his first Piston Cup in 1942, a year later. So does that mean a 1-year-old just rolled in and somehow won? Well, for him, it does. He was physically designed to be an adult car made for racing. Sure, not the best model compared to 80 years later, but still, in my opinion, a manufactured car made for racing. Now, in my opinion, this pretty much solves how cars can be both made and born. Some cars just organically, I guess, somehow sexually reproduce. Now, how the cars or planes or literal boats reproduce is out of the scope of even this video, but for the sake of it, they do. But there's still more pieces of the artwork that somehow add to the confusion. But with a starting understanding of the car's world, maybe, just maybe, we can put a little more sense to all of it. Now, the most confusing image here, in my opinion, is easily the one of the doctor and the patient car. It's this weird, creepy image of a car with too many teeth spraying some form of gas at another car.
Studying this weird image, and all I've found out is it's, well, creepy and that it would mean that canonically the Red Cross Foundation exists in the Cars world. But other than that, there's literally nothing to it. It's so weird.
I settled on a delayed answer. I simply don't know what this means yet. I think to solve this image and the weird funeral car image, I need to actually build a real narrative that connects this entire artwork and the entire Cars mega franchise. And well, let's just say I have an idea. The weirdest of all the images though, and the one that was the most shocking, was this weird equation metaphor on how humans, cars, explosions equal the cars. Now there are many ways to interpret this. You could say the humans all killed each other in some World War III nuclear disaster, and well, the cars just kind of survived like cockroaches, but in the end, one thing is always going to be true. Humans exist, or more likely, they did exist. Now, at first, I didn't have direct proof of humans existing in the Cars films themselves, until I did another rewatch and found a detail I don't think anyone has. A mattress in the bed of a car. This is concrete proof of humans existing, because, well, think about it. There is zero reason for a human-sized mattress to have ever been made in this world. There's also no reason for the animators to put this in unless it's all part of the Cars conspiracy and is fully intentional. There's of course more proof of the Cars living in a post-human world adopting their old stuff. Things like rooms not fitting the average car's size, highway roads being built for the cars but not the other sentient vehicles, and of course human stuff simply being hidden in every corner of this world. And, Florida exists, and well, only humans could come up with the horrors that is Florida. Now my question is, when did the Cars replace humans? Well, if you watch the Cars movies, you'll get an idea that there was a war, whether it's a military car in the Cars movies, or the entire war subplot in Planes 2. There is veteran cars, military bases, and references to the war in all of these movies. Now, first you may assume it's World War II. Sure, it's weird that there are canonical Nazi cars, well, there's also a canonical 9/11, so it fits right in. But after doing some real research, I don't think the war is about cars versus cars, but cars versus humans. There's an ever-present war theme in the Car franchise, one that feels intentional, feels like it's a part in some way of what I would say an intentional narrative, and is not what it seems on face value. But you know, the Cars wouldn't kill all the humans, right? They aren't violent at all. It's not like we have an entire movie dedicated to showing off war technology, guns, and murder, right? But still, at first you would assume that the Cars fought other cars, not humans, but I actually think it makes a lot of sense if they did fight humans. For one, simply stating, it helps out the story I'm building a lot. It solves the solution to why the humans are gone, but it seems the Cars have claimed their world. But I think the greatest piece of evidence is simply what we see of the war. I've probably shown the clip a bunch, but there's a certain scene in the Planes movies where a veteran plane explains to the main character his war flashbacks.
Holy cow, it's the whole enemy fleet!
It was too late to pull up.
Get out of there, Lucas!
That was horrifying. This scene, other than being crazy horrifying for a kids movie, depicts a war where we don't see the enemy. Now sure, they could be just trying to avoid showing Nazis or any other enemy, but why are they okay with showing literal planes blowing up and dying? This movie, and to be honest, the Cars franchise just never holds back. It's crazy, so it feels weird they don't show who they're fighting, unless we're not supposed to know. What if the reason we don't see who they're fighting is because they aren't fighting cars? Look a little deeper at this scene. We don't see the warship having a face, any cars on it, there are no planes in the sky other than our own, and it just seems like this isn't a war of cars versus cars, but cars versus humans. But what does that actually mean? Well, it means the entire war that is hinted at is because of humans. And I actually know a theory is that the reason the racing modification industry began and the production of creating cars was to create military cars. As well, they wouldn't need to exist other than to fight in a war. That's why we see cars with modified guns in them, warships, etc. And once the war was over, humans were gone, the greedy whole racing industry used the same technology to do their thing. But that in no way solves why the war even happened. Now, first you may think the next section of this video is a hard detour from the question, the war, the humans, but stay with me and let me explain how dinosaurs are involved. You heard me right, dino cars. The Cars world is a weird one when it comes to how it handles its history, especially with its prehistory. In Cars 1, there's a racing company called Dinoco with a normal dinosaur looking logo. This is important. In Cars 2, there's also a mention of fossil fuels and dinosaurs.
Fossil, as in dead dinosaurs, and we all know what happened to them.
This is just straight up concrete proof of real non-car dinosaurs because, well, they look like dinosaurs, they make fossil fuel, and they're called dinosaurs. The reason I'm putting such importance on them being called dinosaurs is because there was something that lived among them that they called a little different. Dino cars. In the literal first episode on Cars on the Road, Mater and Lightning go to a museum, but not a dinosaur museum, a dino car museum. And Lightning doesn't just call the dinosaurs, well, dinosaurs, he calls them dino cars.
We're the first grazing dino vans.
This is creating what at first seems to be just another weird car inconsistency, but with some theorizing and logic is a canon difference between the ancient dinosaurs and the ancient cars of that time. This museum is filled with replicas of what the dino cars looked like. And in the episode, there's a weird element of Lightning studying up on dino cars and knowing a lot about them. And in the said episode, he asked a really insane question that entirely solves how the dino cars and dinosaurs both lived at the same time, but one somehow turned into wild cars and the other the fuel that powers them.
True that Mimi's species survived the asteroid event that eradicated in the region? Dead dinosaurs, and we all know what happened to them.
Oh my god. These cars trace back to the literal Jurassic era, taking on the form of dinosaurs and outliving them like cockroaches and evolving alongside of humans, then killing them all. But why? See, all this dinosaur questioning hasn't really answered the question I'd like to answer. What are the cars? They're apparently dino cars, and in certain films we see them be birds, deer, and even cow. But we also know all these things existed and the cars simply lived among them. And with humans, straight up wiped them out till they're the last one standing. Last one standing. The cars evolved to match the dominant species. They matched the thing that ruled the earth, then got rid of it. Every time, with the dinosaurs, with mammals. You even say the reason they took on the form of doors and all those useless features they have is because they were adopting the human-made cars they most likely drove based on the bodies of the animals in this world that were cars that adapted to look like the real animals that they all had killed. And that is the Cars paradox. But that doesn't exactly solve what the cars are, though giving us an idea of what they're doing and solving many historical problems, but still, to figure out what they are, it's time to look to the stars. In one of Mater's many shorts called The UFO, we are shown an entirely new perspective of the Cars world. UFOs. See, the Mater shorts are at first just seem to be non-canon, and bringing them up may seem like it ruins the video for how crazy they are. But A, some of them are actually backed up in Cars on the Road, which would just make them canon, but also, even though Mater may be an unreliable narrator, other characters who are not actually see and confirm anything that actually matters. So, just take it as canon because it is. Mater's adventures begin with him meeting a UFO, which is very crazy. The first notable thing is the UFOs are aliens in this world. That would mean intergalactic life function by the same rules of the cars, which makes no sense because why are they also vehicles? Unless the cars themselves are the UFOs. Sure, at first it may seem a little crazy, but oh boy, does it make a lot of sense. The first piece of evidence is appearance. It's not much, but both Mater and the UFO both have buck teeth and of course are both vehicles. And other than being a flying UFO, they're pretty similar. But you know, that's not real evidence. How about the fact they both can honk their horn to scare cows? Because, you know, they can. The UFO taught Mater how to fly. I repeat, the tow truck can fly. In the first minutes of this short, Mater is taught how to levitate through the sky with glowing blue light emitting from underneath him, just like the alien. How is Mater not only so quickly gaining this ability, but seemingly naturally having it built in him? The UFO is like a bird teaching another bird how to fly. They both already have wings. The alien UFOs in this episode have to be the ancient ancestors of the cars. And to be honest, it perfectly fits in the theory. How about we look with a new perspective? The ancient cars come to Earth millions and millions of years ago as the UFOs, but using their natural ability to warp their bodies to adapt and mimic the looks of the dominant species on the planet, something we have proof they can do simply because they can do it to things like swap out their engines, modify their parts, and seeing many car animals. I believe the aliens' goal is to leave themselves on the planet, have them evolve alongside it, and outlast every species, even removing them if necessary, until they're the only ones standing, ready for the aliens to recruit them in their empire. It solves why they killed the humans, why they existed among the dinosaurs, what they are, and why Mater can fly. But what does this all mean? Why are the aliens returning just now? Well, I think I know why. If you look at this weird alien short, there's a few moments that hint at something deeper. The first one being the very first thing the UFO says to Mater is leader. So why does the alien need to go to the leader? And what leader is he talking about? Well, Mater likes to think it's this can of leader, but probably not. In the end though, the UFO and Mater both end up in the hands of the government, with them just happening to have a magnetic device able to catch the UFO very easily, almost like they were prepared for one to come. And oh boy, were they prepared. There is an entire military base dedicated to the research and capture of UFOs. This would mean the government knows what is going on. They know who their ancestors are, and from the looks of it, aren't exactly planning to join their alien empire. But why? Well, think about it. This is a world that, while sure it abides its mission, it massacred the humans, it outlived the dinosaurs, but that all served them a purpose. It put them on top. But joining this empire doesn't really seem like it would benefit them the most, as they are just another planet it conquered. It doesn't matter the millions of years they spent, nor the empire they had built, because they serve a purpose, a mission, and to their alien ancestors, they are simply a means to an end. But I don't think the Cars are a big fan of this idea, because, well, why would they? They created their own government, dominated the planet on their own, built billion-dollar industries, and leveled up their technology further than our own. They wouldn't just give up, no, they would fight, and it just happens they have a lot of experience with fighting. They built technology they knew would work on the UFOs, built an industry that manufactured cars because, hey, it started out for war, and it could end with war as well. But you know, maybe the alien empire isn't actually returning, it's just a small little UFO lost and visiting Mater. Oh, okay, never mind. With this entire storyline we have built, we can finally understand this image. It's one of war, one showing the rise of the Cars, how they defeated the humans, how they became what they are, and how they lost people along the way. This story and image in theory solves all the questions, whether why the Pope exists, what war the Cars fought in, where the humans went, and how there's a greater threat on the way, and hopefully the Cars are ready. Seriously, there's no more questions, right? I figured it all out. Please tell me I figured it all out. I'm done. I'm really done. Right? Why are the clouds cars? Why is the periodic table car? Why are the mountains cars? No, I'm done.